name is Charlie Swingle and I'm a physical therapist here at the Recovery Project. We'll be presenting today our low back series part 2. What you'll need for this is you'll need a strap. I have here a stretching strap. You can use a belt, a dog leash, or an actual stretching strap like the one you see here. And otherwise you'll need a floor, a comfortable area on the floor, a mat table, or a firm mattress. What we'll be doing today is primarily some strengthening exercises to begin with, and then we'll follow up with a few other mobility exercises. If you took part in part 1 of our low back series, that was primarily mobility and stretching. So now we'll start to implement some hip and core strengthening activities and a few kind of more advanced stretches that we can implement into our low back routine in our home exercise program. So let's get right into it. What we'll start with is we'll start in a hook lying position. What that'll look like is we'll be laying on our back with our knees bent. Now if you're with us for part 1, our low back series part 1, we did a posterior pelvic tilt. The cues that I like to use for that is thinking about bringing our belly button towards the floor here. Another way is we can take our hand into the small of our back where we have a little bit of a curve and you feel like your back's not touching the ground here. What we'll do is we'll flatten our low back, so we'll tilt our pelvis posteriorly into the mat, and what you'll feel is your abdominals have to engage to do that. So, when we're in our posterior pelvic tilt, what we can work on initially, which we did in part 1, is holding and maintaining that posterior pelvic tilt for a 5 count. Once we feel we've mastered that, we can start to make it a little bit more difficult. So again, we'll go into that posterior pelvic tilt, pulling our belly button towards our spine, towards the floor here. And then what I want to do is we'll start marching. Now the important thing here is to not lose that posterior pelvic tilt. So if you feel like when you're marching we start to get that curvature there, we're not maintaining that posterior pelvic tilt. So what I would want you to do is go ahead and reset, hold there, and remember, be sure not to hold your breath while you're performing these. And you're going to perform marches, keeping that posterior pelvic tilt, keeping those abdominals on. What we want to shoot for typically is a set of 10 each, in 3 sets total. So that would be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Good. That is posterior pelvic tilt with marching. Again, we want to shoot for 3 sets of 20, or 3 sets of 10 each leg, so 3 sets of 20, maintaining that posterior pelvic tilt the entire way through. The next activity that we'll be performing is a bridge. Again, we will be in this hook lying position that you see here. The main thing that I want to focus on with the bridge here is that when we elevate our hips off the mat, what I want to feel is our glutes working. So, I don't want to feel the tension through the low back. You may feel a little bit into the hamstrings, but where I primarily want you to focus is in getting the glutes to squeeze here, okay? Feeling it in the glutes. So again, what we'll do is we'll get into hook lying position, get your feet nice and set here, and then we're lifting our low back and our hips off of the mat. Now some of you may be able to go higher than others. We don't have to go so high that we're all the way to the ceiling where we get a ton of extension here. Again, we just want to lift our hips up off the mat and feel glute squeezing. So what I like to do is get a nice little hold at the top here. So we'll run through a set of 10 together. We'll lift up, hold, 1, 2, 3, and back down. Good, nice and controlled here. Up, 1, 2, 3, and back down, nice and controlled. This is a great exercise for strengthening our hip girdle area. This can help us with activities such as sit to stands, squatting, anything that requires good glute strength. Good, and our goals here are going to be, again, 3 sets of 10 to start. If that's too difficult for you, you can start with a lower dosage and work your way up. Good. Here's number 7, I believe. We'll work through a whole set of 10 here. Again, squeezing the glutes at the top, feeling the glutes working. 8. 9. And 10. Good. Now, if those felt too easy for you, and that bridge was, it felt like a breeze for you, we can make it a little bit more difficult. What we can do is we can do a bridge with marching, which would be a nice progression from the bridge if you feel like you can do 30 repetitions pretty easily. So what a bridge with marching will look like is we'll extend up, and we'll hold that bridge position, and then we'll unweight each leg, similar to how we did with the posterior pelvic tilt in marching. Now, the big thing that you want to focus on here is trying to keep your pelvis as aligned as possible. So when I unweight and I lift my right leg up, I'm going to have a tendency to want to drop to the side. So we have to use our glute strength here to hold us up nice and solid. And again, this is a more challenging activity, so you can start with maybe 3 sets of 5. So 5 each leg, and that'll equal 10. If it's easy, again, we can increase our dosage. So let's run through 1 set of 5 on each leg here together. So this is bridge with marching. We'll lift up, and then we'll lift right leg. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good, and then you'll lower down. Good, again, if the bridges, 3 sets of 10, feel like they're a breeze for you, we can try to progress to the bridges with marching. That would be a nice progression. That would be something that you could find more difficult, that would challenge the glutes. So our next activity will be clamshells. What we'll be doing for clamshells is we'll be on our side, and you can get a pillow to support your head, or you can use your hand to support your head, whatever's comfortable for you. What you'll see here is we're laying on our side, and we're going to have our knees bent, feet stacked on top of each other as well. What I want to focus on is keeping from our hips and our trunk in a nice alignment. So I don't want us leaning back too far. I don't want us too far flexed forward. I want it in a nice straight line. From here, what we'll do is we're going to lift up and back down, open and closing like a clamshell. And we'll go for 3 sets of 10 each side. 2, 3, 4, 5. And where you'll feel this working is in the outside of the hip there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once you complete 10, you'll switch sides. So we'll go ahead and flip onto the other side here. And we'll go through 10 repetitions, focusing on the top leg. So the left leg will be the one that I'm working here. And again, feet stacked, knees stacked, our trunk in nice alignment here. 1, 2. And again, this is a nice controlled motion, so I don't want to see us running through it super quickly here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Good. So that's the clamshells. What we want to shoot for is 3 sets of 10 on each side there. Our next one that we're going to be doing is a nice core strengthening activity called the dead bug. What that'll look like is we'll be laying flat on our back. Starting position can be, again, this hook lying position that we're quite familiar with at this point. What we're going to do is we're going to start by straightening out our arms and then putting our legs into a tabletop position. So we're taking our legs off the ground here. Again, once what we've gone over already with the posterior pelvic tilt, we want to get into a posterior pelvic tilt. So go ahead and flatten that low back, pull that belly button to the spine, flatten your low back against the mat here. What we can start with is just alternating upper extremities. Trying to keep that low back flat against the mat table. Good, and you would shoot for 2 sets of 10 there. Or, I'm sorry, 3 sets of 10 there. With 10 each arm. If that was easy for you, we could do a progression for the dead bug, where we would get back into our starting position, arms at 90 degrees flexion, legs in a tabletop position, posterior pelvic tilt, flattening the low back, and then you could do extension of the legs. Now you'll feel that you have to work a little bit harder, keep your core a little bit tighter to keep our low back flat against the mat here. Keeping our abdomen engaged, not losing that posterior pelvic tilt. And again, we could work through 10 each leg if we're able to. If that's too difficult for you, you can start with 5 each leg and start to work your way up. Good. If you feel that that activity is quite easy for you, we can go into our next progression for the dead bug, which will be alternating upper and lower extremities. And I'll show you a few repetitions of what that looks like here. This one, typically in clinic, I like to try 3 sets of 5 each side, so it'll be a total of 10 movements for each repetition. We'll get the arms up into 90 degrees of flexion here, shoulder flexion. Then we'll get the legs into a tabletop position. Again, you can see that I'm tilting my pelvis posteriorly, getting my abdomen engaged, and then we're going to go alternating while trying not to lose that posterior pelvic tilt. 3, 4. This is a nice coordination activity as well. 6. And we'll go 2 more, which would complete 1 set there. Good. And that is the dead bug with several progressions. So again, for the dead bug, we can start with just alternating arms, maintaining that posterior pelvic tilt, keeping our low back flat against the table here. If the arms are too easy, we can alternate legs. And if the legs are too easy, then we combine the movements, alternating upper extremity and lower extremity. Good. Our next activities for this low back series part 2 are going to be a couple of stretching activities. And again, in the beginning of the session, I said we could use a dog leash, a belt, a stretch strap. Here I have a stretch strap, so I'll show you what these 2 stretches look like with the stretch strap. The first one is going to be a gastroc or a calf stretch. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take our whatever leash, strap, belt we have, and we're going to go around the top of the foot here. So, what I want to do is I want to pull my toes towards me. Where I'm going to feel a stretch is through the back of the calf here. And again, we can do this in a tall sitting, or in a sitting position like we are here. You can do it laying completely flat on your back. I like to do it just sitting right here and getting a nice stretch this way. And again, as with all our other stretches, we're going to go for 30 seconds up to 45 seconds, 3 sets on each side. You can use a timer on your phone, you can use a clock on the wall if you have one with a seconds hand, or you can just count in your head. Once you get to that 30 seconds, we'll alternate sides and go to the other side here, and we'll stretch. Good, and as with all our other stretches, this doesn't have to be too aggressive. Again, you just want to feel a stretch, something that you can maintain for 30 to 45 seconds. And you just kind of try to relax into it here. Good, and we'll do 3 sets on each side here for that. The next activity that we'll get into is going to be our hamstring stretch. So for our hamstring stretch, we're going to need, again, a stretch strap here. What we're going to do is we're going to lay on our back. We can start off in the hook lying position. What we want to do is we want to take our strap here, wrap it around the foot, get each side even so we can pull on both sides here. And then we're going to take ourselves up into a hamstring stretch. Now wherever you feel the tension, that's where you're going to hang out. So for me, my hamstrings aren't super flexible, and I'm already feeling tension here, so this is where I will hang out. And I'm going to hold. And again, for our stretching, we're holding 30 to 45 seconds, 3 sets on each side. Once you get to that time period there of 30 or 45 seconds, you'll go ahead and lower down, and you'll alternate to the other side. So we'll set up our strap, get the sides even here, lay back flat, and bring ourselves up into where we feel that tension there. And then we'll hold. And again, you want to just kind of try to relax in that position. You may feel after a little bit, you can go a little bit farther into that hip flexion there. If you feel you're able to, go a little bit farther. If not, just hang out where you are for 30 to 45 seconds. Once you get to that time period, you go ahead and alternate again. Alright, and so that's it for our low back series part 2. Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to check back soon for part 3 of our low back series, which will be a nice progression of some of the strengthening activities that we did in part 2, as well as some increased difficulty of activities for both mobility and strengthening. So be sure to check back soon. Thanks for joining us.